Okay, and we're live. So that was our super fun video sort of intro for this special episode. My name is Jasmine, and I'm a witchy content creator here on YouTube. It's streaming on different platforms. If you don't already know me, nice to meet you. I have a wonderful special guest that will be filling in today for Australia. Unfortunately, she's not able to make it. But on like the shortest notice ever, I was lucky enough to bribe this lovely person into helping me with this video. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hold up a minute. You said bribe. Does that mean I get something for this?
Yeah, I mean, I was like,
you got to be in the intro. Shut up.
I made you, yeah, I like put you in the cute intro. And also too, I was like, you want to do it with me?
Yes. So hi everyone. I'm Taya. Taya Kennedy. That is my YouTube channel name, Taya Kennedy. Look it up. And yeah, I guess that makes me a witchy YouTube content creator, if we want to get all official with it. Yeah, I just like talking. I like talking and I like witchcraft. So here we are.
And Taya is a huge part of kind of what got me into a lot of this sort of like trad crafty witches devil sort of current that I've been really writing for a little while. And it's wild seeing some connections that, you know, through the Red Thread Academy and through like talking with Taya and other really cool trad crafters, like how deep some of these roots between this trad craft sort of current and just like my life experiences have been. Like I remember I made that video, right? Talking about shape shifting, and you were like the fetch, and I made a video talking about this like wild dream, which I now feel like was like a witch flight I had with the witch's devil. And I believe like the witch's devil in green is this terminology that I'm using for it, is like maybe the first form of the devil that I've met before I even knew the devil was the devil. Like I have a Google Doc of the experience. I remember being like, what the hell is this? Like, it's not this deity. It doesn't really fit that deity. It doesn't really fit, you know, this codex of spirits. So I'm excited to talk about this.
I love your Google Docs. She's always like, here's the Google Doc. Check this out.
You know, I love a Google Doc. I love organizing everything in a Google Doc. You can share it really easily that way. Like, especially for like a ritual or something, and then everyone can like access it from their phones, and it can just be like our electronic grimoire where we're standing in circle with our Google Doc. As the witchy PTA mom, did everyone receive the doc? Okay.
Don't worry. Did everybody print out a copy? Did you highlight your parts? Yeah. But I have to say, Jazz, you're so good at like putting together, like, do you know what I mean? You're like, oh, the seasons and the colors and the things and the like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is like brilliant. You're like so good at like putting that stuff into like words. I don't know. You're just like,
I mean, I definitely have taken so much inspiration from other correspondences as well, you know? And I think one of the cool things with the Red Thread Academy is how much I feel like, you know, since I'm in the first year of it now, I feel like a lot of it goes back to like, what is your personal correspondence with XYZ? And it's kind of led me to think a lot more critically about like why I make the certain associations that I do, and trying to kind of be like, well, wait, that doesn't really make a lot of sense now that I think about like the correspondence of it, and like, okay, if that doesn't quite fit, then like what does, you know? So I guess we should probably start with maybe just like we can define what we mean by like the witch's devil. And we also too might have like slightly different interpretations, and I think that that's kind of like part of it. I liked a lot in your stream with the Witch of Enchantment, with when you guys were talking about otherworld travel, and like you were kind of talking about how like it's super normal for, you know, every witch to have a very different otherworld experience. And like I feel like the devil is similar. Like I think that there's threads, if you will, that are like connecting amongst multiple different practitioners, but like maybe the texture or color of how those threads are maybe perceived from witch to witch, I think can be very different.
and I think it's just like any relationship you have, right? Like my relationship with you is going to be different than your relationship with Australia. It's going to be different than your relationship with your husband. It's going to be different than your relationship with your mentor. It's going to be different than your relationship with your boss. It's going to be different relationship with your friend. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and there's common threads. There's things that we all know about Jasmine where we're like, oh yeah, that's totally her. But there's other things where it's like, you'll get more personal with some people than with others. And like, I don't know how you are when you're at work and you're being all like professional and doing your thing, right? Like everybody knows people differently. And I think it's very much the same with spirits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would define like, and I've made a little bit of content, I think you have as well. I would define the witch's devil to me, like putting it into my own words. I think the witch's devil can absolutely have sort of a deity relationship with the witch if that's what you would like to have. I feel like the witch's devil is, I feel like more of a familiar spirit. And then so like there's the aspect of like, well, what exactly is the difference between a familiar spirit and a deity? Like I remember you talking about that, and that, like I have been like racking my brain over, well, why do I separate the two between a familiar spirit and a deity? And I feel like when I think of like deity, I think of like classical sort of liturgy and practice of like worship. And I think that that can be applied to the devil in multiple different ways, like a Luciferian sort of lens or a neo pagan lens. But I also think it can be more like a friendship, like, and it feels more intimate, like here on earth kind of thing, as opposed to looking up to the stars and trying to determine their meanings and messages. Like, I don't know. I feel like the devil is very much here on earth with us. And I feel like the devil is androgynous. And I feel like the devil is bestial. Like, I feel like the devil is animate in the landscape that we live in and relates to us in the other world and the physical realms. And to me, the witch's devil is like a friend, a friend.
Yeah. Personally, I don't know that I see him as a friend, but like definitely almost like an ancestral spirit. Something from before the time of humans. Do you know what I mean? Like just timeless.
Kind
And
of like, would you think like kind of like the belief of um like some of the fair folk, for example, kind of being like who inhabited the earth before humanity?
yeah. And like almost like the devil the folklore devil like encompasses like all of humanity, like all of our best parts and all of our worst parts. And like is almost like as ephemeral as nature itself.
Yeah, I feel like
That
the witch's
nature is
devil is the
amoral.
embodiment.
Nature is amoral. Nature can be kind and benevolent, and it's like a lovely, sunbeam on a beautiful meadow, but it's also a crashing tsunami that's going to wipe out an entire city full of women and children and old people.
Mm-hmm.
Like nature just is.
And I see the witch's devil as like sort of a physical embodiment of that nature, but
Yeah.
also like wrapped with like the embodiment of magic, like of arcane in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like, I have some of these books that I've pulled over here kind of to the side just to kind of recommend to anyone who's interested in like maybe some literature or where we've kind of taken some inspiration from for this live stream. So the first one of that would be like Gemma Gary's The Devil's Dozen. I'm still reading through this one. I had to put it back down to finish our current book club book, which is The Witch's Devil, which I know you finished this one already. No, you haven't? Is this your
We did
current
it
book?
for our book club, but I didn't quite get it finished because I'm having a really hard time with reading right now, which is a whole another thing. So I didn't actually finish it, but it is brilliant, that book. I'm
So good.
so in love with that book.
I really like Roger Horn's writing style. I just recently finished this one. This is our current book club book, which I think our meetup is being pushed into May because we've had some stuff going on in April. So I think we're pushing the physical meetup into May. But like both of these books, I feel like kind of nod at these like seasons of the devil. Um, because in Jim McGarry's book, there's very much like the man in black sort of like figure or the devil in black. And in Roger's book, I feel like he kind of touches on the man in black, but also this like verdant green, untamed wild, um, bestial devil of the untamed wild wood, you know?
Mhm. Interesting. The Bougie mystic said, in I'm not gonna try in Roman tradition, they see him more as a mentor, which brings to mind like Azazel and teaching humans about like witchcraft in a mentoring sort of capacity.
Hmm.
And I think that's just it. Like the devil is really the devil is the witch father is sort of the and is sort of encompassed by all of these different other spirits, right? Like Azazel and Lucifer and even maybe Satan. Is encompassed by like Cernunnos and Hern and Odin and like you can kind of
Pan.
Pan, yeah, like they're all in there.
I mean, I really do enjoy the idea of the witch's devil kind of representing, you know, pre-Abrahamic wild gods,
Yeah,
but also like post-Abrahamic infernal lords.
yeah.
Um, I don't know, I enjoy that like blend. Um, and also kind of like reclaiming our pre-Abrahamic gods and including the infernal nature that was either maybe cast upon them or inherently part of their nature. I mean, like, I think that there could be lots of like infernal aspects without really looking at it from even like an Abrahamic lens, but like a panic, like,
Think of like a even just like a raging forest fire.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's infernal as hell. Literally. I remember we had these like I mean, I live in Alberta, so we like have had many summers of just crazy wildfires, but this was way back like in the early 2000s and I was driving up to Peace River and with a bunch of people and we were driving and we had to drive through this section of forest where it had literally very recently just been on fire and it just the glowing embers were still there and the smoke and you look off and all you could see was this black char full of glow. I mean, I remember thinking we are literally driving through the pits of hell. Like it was intense.
That sounds like a
Yeah.
that almost reminds me of this scene, which like for another reference of like witch's devil. I don't know if anyone who's watching this live or as a replay, or if you, Taya, have heard of the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast. Oh my goodness. It is so delicious. Um, I believe here in Indiana, the Old Gods of Appalachia are actually coming, and they're doing like a live uh, storytelling. But basically, the Old Gods of Appalachia is exactly what it sounds like. It's like this horror anthology, not sponsored, by the way, you guys, but it's like this horror anthology podcast series of like a bunch of these different sort of like stories and characters. Like there's multiple different witches in the Old Gods of Appalachia, and there is this almost devil in green esque like figure, but also a devil in black esque like figure. That's a very prominent character that overlaps in a lot of the different stories. It's kind of almost like, you know how like in Game of Thrones, right? There's a bunch of side stories that make up the big story. I feel like that's how Old Gods of Appalachia is. Have you
I
not seen
never
Game of
watched Game of
Thrones?
Thrones.
Well, you know what I mean. Like where the side, like there's all these character side stories that make up the big story. And the big story is that it takes place, I think, somewhere in Kentucky. And basically, like there's this big coal mine company that is pushing these miners into some really unethical practices, and some crazy shit happens in the mines frequently. And the people who are running this coal mine company are also kind of like witchy, um, and have sort of like otherworldly powers. Like the owner's daughter is like kind of like basically kind of the main henchman of like the whole thing. Like she enforces the labor and deals with people that are trying to uprise against the coal mining company. And she uses a lot of like magic and otherworldly sort of powers to keep the peasants, the workers in line, basically. But
Yep.
then also, like out in the woods, there's these other two big prominent witches that are sisters that are basically at like rivals, you know. So, I mean, we love a good rivalry. And then there's also, I forget what they call it, but they call it a clutch. There's a group of these women of like different ethnicities and ages that all live together. And there's rumors about them, like, you know, doing a thing.
I have to go put the casserole in the oven.
You're fine. You're fine.
I'll be right back.
You're fine. But yeah, there's like this coven of witches that's like the clutch. Then there's like the coal mining company witches. Then there's like the two sisters. So this is not a show. This is a horror anthology series called The Old Gods of Appalachia. You can find it on YouTube or on Spotify, but there is this figure, basically, like I was saying, in the Old Gods of Appalachia that is kind of awakened, or I should say reawakened, that is very much um, like the devil in black or the devil in green. So, yeah, I thought that was a really, really good sort of like pop culture reference. Another big inspiration of this is I recently read Delilah Temple's To Call Ye Forth, which I did a review on this book. I really, really enjoy it. I think the second one is supposed to be coming out soon. But basically, in To Call You Forth, it features a coven of witches. Oddly enough, actually from my city, which you hardly ever see witches being written about in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Midwest. So it was just like, it made it very relatable. But basically, in this coven, it kind of details these different witches in the coven and their relationship with the witch's devil. And each witch, you know, to some, the witch's devil is almost more like a father. To some, the witch's devil is almost like a lover. To some, the witch's devil is more like a friend, or even like, I don't know, a mentor, you know, like there's these different sort of like aspects. And um, you know, I definitely kind of drew a lot of inspiration about thinking of the different forms of the devil based upon that book as well. Um, and so if you're interested in some fiction, To Call You Forth for sure, Witch's Devil, but also Slewfoot and that book by Brahm, you've got to read that. It's amazing. The art is incredible. I highly recommend getting the hard copy of that book because then you get like these oil paintings that Brahm has made. And in the so Slewfoot takes place in 1666 Connecticut. See what Brahm did there? Ha ha ha. And basically, this daughter of a cunning woman gets sold off to the new colony to become a new bride. And she's living kind of in this puritanical setting, and her cunning woman sort of stuff starts to like come alive. And of course, this puritanical town is like not super okay with that. But on the down low, women in the church are asking her for charms and little things like that to help with controlling their husbands. But like very much on the down low, underneath their bonnets and hushed voices. And very early on in the book, this is not a spoiler because it's in the summary, but very early on in the book, her husband does die. So not only is she an outsider of this community from a foreign land, but now she's also a widow on her own property, living on the edge of the wilds outside of the safety of the town folk. And so there's lots of rumors about what she's doing out there and how, I think her name is Abatha. She's kind of depicted as a very frail, petite redhead, which that's a big archetype with these witches, right? Woman who's like running this homestead all by herself. And how is she doing it? Right? Because she's keeping bees and trying to grow like corn and taking care of livestock. And so she ends up kind of working with this, almost depending on your perspective, right? To her, this is like a wild god. that she named Samson. But to the townsfolk, that's the devil. And I think that that's a good pop culture sort of reference of the witch's devil, of depending on how you look at it. Like, you know, to some, the witch's devil could be an old wild god, and to others, the witch's devil can very much embody the devils of the new religion, you know? I just went on a whole rant there, but we love a reference.
I need to read these books. They sound
I hope that
very
Slewfoot becomes a movie because it's so iconic.
well, and the artwork is really amazing in that book too, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, stunning.
Like I've heard nothing but good things, so
It is stunning.
I just wrote it down to add to my Amazon book list.
It would be I feel like Slewfoot would be a really fun book club book too. Because
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm thinking. I need a couple of fiction books for the summer,
yeah,
and I'm like,
kind of break it up a little bit, you know?
mhm. Yeah, we do fiction over the summer, so I'm like, ooh,
I think that you and Justin would really enjoy the Slewfoot book as well, because there's a lot of like otherworldly travel in the book with Slewfoot, which is really fun. So I guess when we're talking about, you know, the witch's devil in the aspect of green, my personal correspondences, this is just my correspondences. Take what you like here and leave what you don't. But, you know, and even amongst like Australia and I, like we were disagreeing about some of our own correspondences because like I personally would associate the devil in green, or the devil of like life and virility and like the wild, with spring is where um you know, I could see sort of like that association.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other witches that could also see the association with like the devil in green being summertime, which I could see maybe on like a Shakespearean like Midsummer Night Dream with like the Fae folk and whatnot. I could see that being like a summer solstice, Beltane, vernal equinox. But there's also the devil in gold, which is like the devil of illumination, the light bearer, the Lucifer, if you will, or the Eosphorus, if you will, that could be for summer or could be for spring. Like,
I like the gold in the spring with like the return of the light and this idea of like embracing the light, the knowledge, the wisdom, and then the green, like the verdant green of summer, like especially if you align it with like the equinoxes and the solstices. To
mhm.
me, like the solstice being in June, July, that's the green months of summer, and then like August, September are like the yellower months of summer when you're harvesting and you're at the end of summer. But if you're aligning it with the solstice, I could see green being like the summer solstice. That would make sense to me. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
the
I think it could go, like I said, either way. I
yeah,
don't know if there's really, and I mean, there's not really like a concrete, this is the correct answer. I think it's more about witches individually building their own interpretation. Because between like, you know, the gold, green, red, and black seasons of the devil or aspects of the devil, like, where would you chart them?
I honestly I agree with where you've got everything. I yeah, the to me the black goes with the winter solstice, the darkest
Hmm.
day of the year, the time when everything seems dead and dormant.
Hmm.
Um, and then the red makes sense with the fall equinox and heading into Samhain and that idea of like that witchy season, right? And the red, I don't know, red just seems
Well,
to
like the
fit.
red god, like
Yeah,
Cain, like blood, like
yeah,
witch
a
blood, like the red
sacrifice.
soul. Yeah, sacrifice, the slaughtering of animals, like the turning of the leaves. I mean, I think it would depend on also like your geographic landscape too. Would love to hear from some southern hemisphere witches, like, and what's going on down under and like where they would associate it. Cause like where it's spring for us, it's fall for them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like,
Yes, flipped. Yeah.
yeah. Um, to me, red for fall and black for winter feels very good. But like I kind of go back and forth between summer and spring and gold and green because like I
I
can
think
I can see the green aspect where I live for spring because everything is like wet. and like green and like
green is just coming through, but green is at its height. It's at its like richest, most verdant time in later, right? That's just the beginning of green, which comes at the beginning of the sun. So to me, it's more about the return of the sun, which is going to lead to the green, which is then going to become this full because I see like the green is like I see antlers, I see like that, you know, to me that's more like summer than spring.
But here's the other correspondence and dilemma I have. I could see the gold with the height of the sun of summer solstice, like the sunlight at its highest illumination and radiance of all these sun gods like Apollo and Lucifer and Eosphorus and the morning stars, like, oh, like, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be categorized, but I need it to.
Or like the green man. The green
Yeah.
man is very much like summer. I don't know.
I could see the green man being in between though. Like the green man kind of feels like a Mayday tea to me. Like I also just from my own experiences of being a witch out in the woods, um, a lot of the things that I would associate the green devil with, like life, fertility, virility, like the feralness of humankind and animals and magic and hedonism, like a lot of almost to like sort of Dionysian activities, drinking in the woods, getting absolutely completely sloshed, practicing skyclad with your chosen group or coven. Like that to me feels so Mayday, so Beltane, so Green Man, and almost like the ecstasy of that magical ferality. I don't even know if ferality is a word, but
It is now.
it seems like it would fit well here. Yeah.
That rawness, yeah.
Raw in like multiple forms,
Well, it reminds me once, and it was actually in the winter, but we were up in the mountains, my husband and I, and he just like we got back to the hotel, he parks on the side of the road. We're in Jasper, it's a small town, and they have caribou there who keep their antlers like year round. And we pull, or no, don't they lose them? Anyways, it doesn't matter. We pull over, he parks, I get out of the truck, and we're parked beside this field. And I just like hop out of the truck, da 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 da, and I stop, and all these glowing eyes. And it was like there were these elk, these caribou that were just like standing, like sitting, standing, resting, this whole herd of them. And my husband literally just dropped me off like 2 meters away from the closest one. I was like, the fear that rips through you in that moment when you're like, okay, these are totally peaceful animals.
I was gonna say I don't know
Absolutely
about caribous like that.
tear me apart. They're fucking huge.
Because moose are pretty aggressive, right?
Moose are freaking huge. These are not quite as big as moose, but almost. And I remember one of them like snorting, and it's like its breath coming out, because I mean it's like minus 30 something, and its breath is coming out. And I was just like, and I remember just that moment of like, not like fear for my life, oh my God, but just that moment of like raw power where you're like, the realization hits me that like, this is a moment, like if I move the wrong way, if I do the wrong thing, I could be stampeded by an entire herd of elk.
Or impaled, or yeah.
And looking back, that sort of reminds me of the sensation of meeting the witch father or the devil, right? The idea that like I'm safe, but I also need to be careful. Like this is not necessarily a love and light safe little space to be in. Like it's tenuous. It's tenuous. But yeah, I don't know how I got on that, but yeah, that was.
No, but like what an incredible experience to like be surrounded by all those caribou.
That was like trippy. It was really cool. And then like once what I had done like a meditative, trancy, otherworldly excursion, and I was going, and the devil literally like swooped in and took me, and we danced, and it was like this moment of like, and I didn't plan for that. That was not at all what the journey was supposed to be about, and it was incredible. And that was like, he was like a horned
Like
antlered,
bestial.
bestial, like rutting, stanky being. It was intense. Like the sensations were like intense. And that was
Some of that too is like similar things are like outlined with Dancing with the Devil in the Other World in like the book Slewfoot. That's why I was saying a lot of the otherworldly travel that's mentioned in that book I think would be really up your alley. Because the way essentially that she affects change in the physical is by doing work like in the other world
yeah.
that then like parallels into ours. Like the amount of actual witchery that she's really doing on the homestead in the physical realm is like quite it's very folkish and it's very
Mhm.
simple sort of things, but like the fantasy of magic that so many of us sort of like think of um is like so present in the other world, and like her weaving and dancing with the devil to like affect the crops and stuff is a big thing in that book.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a big part for a lot of people about traditional witchcraft is a lot of the work happens in an otherworldly space. It isn't necessarily magic worked on this plane.
I feel like that's why, the hedge witches, if you will, like hedge witchery and some of these tradcraft things kind of really complement each other really well. Um, I think and can go hand in hand. Like I think hedge witchery can be a gateway drug to tradcraft.
Gateway drug, yeah.
Or vice versa, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah, when I'm thinking of the Green Devil, like I'm thinking of something that very much embodies nature, that is found almost exclusively in like a wooded or natural area, maybe a cave, maybe a mountain, maybe a creek bed or a river, maybe like a thicket, maybe like a hedge, maybe the woods. I absolutely associate it like antlered, large, bestial, bipedal, but could also like turn its form into other creatures, almost not quite right sort of creatures of the woods, like not just a general looking rabbit, but like a sort of queer looking rabbit that's like just not quite right. Maybe it has an extra eye in the middle of its forehead and it's like jet black and almost see-through or something. Like it could sort of shift its form in that way. I also, when I feel the Green Devil sort of speaking to me, like I feel almost like the voices of the Green Devil like vibrating through me, but I don't necessarily see it coming out of the mouth of the Green Devil. It's almost like it's echoing out of the wild woodland area itself. And you can hear the devil's voice kind of like calling to you or guiding you through sex and hedonism, fertility, and just like really embracing the feralness and rewilding like the witch within you to like charge yourself for the work.
yeah, and I think that's a big part of it is like this idea that we have that nature is like so pretty, and it's like no, it's like it's raw, and it's tenuous, and it's amoral, and it's yeah, I don't know how. I'm not good at putting things into words like you are.
Yes, you are.
I'm just like, I
Yes,
can't finish
you are.
my words, but just that idea that it is like it's so overwhelmingly powerful. We are just this little speck, and it can do with us what it wants. If a tornado wants to touch down and take your house, it's gone. You know? If a volcano wants to overflow and like take out Pompeii, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I just yeah, that raw power of it, I really feel like that is just so encompassed by the witch's devil.
And I agree. Like, I think that, like, to me, when I feel like I am in the presence of the devil, I feel like it's a combination of like ecstasy, whether that be of a sexual nature or a ritual nature, like sort of the madness, the magical sort of like madness and like the swept awayness and being carried in a ritual setting, especially a group ritual setting where there's, multiple people sort of pouring their energy into this, and it's creating a hive collective mind almost of like euphoria and ecstasy, whether or not there's anything like literally erotic happening. There's an ecstasy of ritual. Go ahead.
Just the way you're describing this and the thoughts that I'm having, it reminds me very much about almost like a little bit of like BDSM, a little bit, right? That idea that you have to sort of just succumb to it. You have to just let go and trust in it. And things could go very wrong, but they probably won't. You know what I mean? But there's like that tenuousness, that edge to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that the relationship with the witch's devil has that same kind of push and pull to it, right? Like things could go so they probably won't. They're gonna be fine. Just relax and trust and go with it. You're probably gonna be fine. But just that little tiny edge to it, you know?
Yeah, like that's why I think ecstasy and fear, not so much
Go
fear
hand
as like
in hand.
you're in physical danger, this is going to
No,
hurt
not like
kind of
true
thing,
fear.
but like an animalistic primal fear of like, you know, how you might feel in front of the big caribou.
Yeah.
Like, that the caribou is likely to not necessarily mean you harm, but it could.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that. And, when working with the witch's devil in like a coven environment, that to me is the sign that like what we are doing, um, and what our intention is what exactly is happening. Like if I don't feel the ecstasy of the ritual and a sense of fear, and euphoria and almost drunkenness from the magic emanating from the ritual, like I don't think the devil's present
Yeah.
without that. Like I feel like when the devil walks in the room and the space of ritual, both those things are kind of required to
It's
me. Fear and
yeah,
fear and
it's like
ecstasy.
this overwhelming presence. Like
But I think that that's could be said for all forms of the witch's devil. I don't necessarily think that's exclusively the green. I think that the fear and the euphoria of the green is more connected inherently to like nature itself, sexuality, hedonism, virility, and like being feral, and connecting with your bestial nature,
mhm.
like of your own,
Yeah.
and using that in conjure, using that in magic, using that as a way to sort of imbue yourself with that ferocity of nature for, protection or manipulation or whatever needs you might have. That feralness of the wild could be beneficial for commanding, domination, fertility, if that's a thing for you. I've heard some very interesting stories and like some forums online of witches working fertility spells with the devil. And none of this is experiences of my own. So I won't necessarily confirm or deny that, oh, yeah, I think that's real or I don't think that's real. But there's an interesting thread of witches, right? Like struggling to get pregnant with their partner. And then they start working. They're not necessarily calling it the green devil. Like, I think a lot of this terminology is very like neo terminology.
But like let's be clear, like on some level you've kind of invented the terminology of green devil. I mean, it's kind of out there, but like do you know what I mean? Like it's not like some overarching concept where we're all like, "Oh yeah, that."
Right. Like it's in like this
Works.
book or there. Like I think it's kind of taken inspiration from a lot of different works. But I do think that like, Delilah Temple, right?
Mhm.
Or Roger J. Horn or Gemma Gary would probably also all tap into this archetype and agree with it in their own work too, whether or not they used those like specific labels.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they do. This is just kind of how we're referring to it, like in our own understanding.
Agreed.
So yeah, and then when working with like the green devil, like if we were to separate these aspects of the devil, they're all the devil, but we could interpret them because I think our human minds like labels and boxes. And I think it can break down these like really big archetypes into more palatable, targetable aspects of like this big thing, because the devil could be, like you've said, like so ephemeral that like it could be hard to put your finger on it or overwhelming.
It's funny. I watched your last video about the seasons of the devil and the 4 different colors. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I watched it and I'm like, oh my God. Like I totally just instantly knew what you were talking about. Right? Having read the same books, I'm like, oh yes, yes, okay. And had similar experiences. Yeah. I can see how this all fits in. So you've just done a really good job of finding the labels to put on the boxes, but they do. It makes
I
sense.
feel like a lot of that too is woven within the first year of the RTA too, and kind of like connecting. I mean, like Cain, Lucifer, Azazel, definitely with a heavier focus, I feel like so far as I'm working through that first year, but I can feel undercurrents of these different devils, you know, just in my first year. And especially when it comes to like some of the folklore, like when like Johnny Barleycorn, like and an association with like this man of nature or this embodiment of the grain and working with Johnny Barleycorn, that was so validating that like we had been working with Johnny Barleycorn and then this kind of comes along and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like this is really like a tea that like we've been tapping into and not knowing that other people were doing the same exact thing.
Well, and I think like the red god then being split into Lucifer in the east and Azazel in the west, and like so your brain's already kind of primed to see it as like different aspects of one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I like the idea of us building rituals around these 4 seasons of the devil. And, doing these rituals within their season as a way to interact with that particular season and that particular face, like of the devil. And it's led me to really consider and think like, okay, so what would the magical attributes be, right? Like I think gold, a big thing would be divination for me and like prophecy, but with green, I think it would be like sex and ferality and like ferocity and a connection with nature. And um, I feel like that ritual setting would have to be in like an outdoor space. I don't know if it would necessarily matter to me if it was day or night. I think it'd be more convenient and accessible to use a state park off the beaten trail deep into the woods during the day where you're not going to get a trespassing charge and go out there with some other practitioners, be it coven mates or not, um, and connect with that aspect of the green devil through ecstasy. And what does ecstasy look like? I think that that can look different. I don't think that like hardcore substances or alcohol is necessarily a requirement, nor do I think it necessarily should be, but like that's definitely how I've tapped into the green devil. I'm not sure how, I don't know, how I would necessarily weave the ecstasy of ritual without mind altering substances for the green devil.
Well, and I
I
mean,
think it can be done.
yeah, but those substances come from our plant allies, right? So there's always a tie in there. And I think it's really interesting that you've tied all this to the solstices and equinoxes, because subconsciously that's when I have like done pacting with the devil, and it's always around the solstices and the equinoxes.
Right?
Always has been. Yeah. And so when you tied it in that way, I was like, I knew that.
Well, and
that's how I had done it.
It feels confirmational that like we are all being sort of divinely guided, maybe by the mighty dead or by spirit allies in this very real other world that is helping witches of today build a very palatable gnosis that we can grow neo traditions from, which we should really do something with that idea of talking about neo traditions in
Mhm.
another stream.
And can you be a traditional witch and have a neo tradition?
I think we should do that.
I feel like some people are clutching pearls right now.
Yeah, I feel like you guys should comment down below and tell Taya that she has to do that stream with me because that would be fun. Maybe it can be a Daughters of Cain or maybe it can be a whatever, you know? Be fun. I can talk to Strady about it too. Um, Another thing that I would say, so just recently, I don't know if you saw my Google Doc that I shared in the Discord earlier or not, but I had put together this sort of like Esbat Sabbath, right? Like ritual. Um, and that's just kind of the working name of like what we called it. We've done sort of Oracle of Delphi trans prophecy based rituals before, which I know is controversial in the craft as well. Like the whole aspect of like spirit possession and like how literally or abstractly we interpret this. I'm speaking from like a literal standpoint of literal spirit possession.
Yeah.
We did that with the witch's devil for the second time recently. I shared my document that we had created together in the disc in case anyone else was like, let's try this. I would love to hear it. But each time that we've done this,
Right here.
oh, you printed it off? Oh
I
my
print
God.
out all your things. So every time you send me a Google Doc, I print it and I put it in my
Aw,
exemplars folder. So that one day
aw,
when I'm like having to put all this together, I'm like, I've got something to refer back to.
aw. I feel so flattered.
Oh yeah, I always print your stuff out. But yeah, that's funny. I'm just all of a sudden was like, oh, it's on the printer.
Well, we one of the like key ingredients to this ritual, like that we think really helped the first time, not that we did like a possession ritual per se, because that kind of falls into like some of the paranormal stuff, like the Three Kings that we've done. But the first time we've tried to work with the witch's devil through a trance prophecy, like Oracle of Delphi sort of setting, we had non initiated, complete noobs to like our coven, like just friends, right? That maybe are interested in the craft or maybe even are witches themselves, but like maybe very new. And I will say, I really think that there's a very strong ingredient that emanates from like the lifeblood of those people in space because they have no idea what the hell they're getting themselves into. And there's some elements in that document that like I won't go into specifics of what certain things mean on this live stream because we got to keep some things inner mystery, of course. But like T, we can talk a little bit about it after the stream. But like a red pour, skyclad. I'm sure a lot of us know what skyclad is, but like just knowing that you're going into a space where you're going to see bodies like that or see people participating in a red pour or ritual scourging, like I think that that element of like ecstasy and fear play really well into creating an atmosphere that is specifically designed for the witch's devil. Like I feel like it's a required ingredient. I don't know.
Again, that tension, right? There's that tension at play where it's like, what's gonna happen? I'm
Yeah.
probably safe, but oh, what's gonna happen?
Well, and to be clear too, with like our guests, like we did explicitly tell them this is what this, and this means. So like if you're not comfortable being in that space and observing it, then this is not, you know, the setting for you.
Yeah.
But we didn't explicitly go into
And even if you know all that, there's that still that little part in your head that's like, are they all gonna turn into crazy axe murderers and chase me out of the woods right now?
mm-hmm.
Right? What have I gotten myself into?
Well, and I think there's a huge difference between reading about witches practicing skyclad or witches incorporating a ritual scourge and doing it or seeing it done in
Mm-hmm.
front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I was extremely skeptical before I had really started practicing any bit of skyclad with other people. I was extremely skeptical. Ugh, I just can't even talk about how valid being skyclad was really going to be because I was a little nervous that some of that was maybe just like some misogynistic patriarchal mess carried over from ceremonial magic communities.
Yeah.
Because there are, groups and orders where like the men don't have to be skyclad, but all the women are. That's a T in other ceremonial magic groups.
Yeah.
So like, is this really something empowering that helps aid in magic, or is this problematic? And I think it could be both, depending on like what group is facilitating that space. I really don't feel comfortable with the idea that it should be mandatory. I think that that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And I also don't know if everyone necessarily will be able to have the same experience with it. I think that from practicing skyclad in a group in different environments, I feel different. Like, to me, practicing skyclad in like my house doesn't feel as aesthetically charged as being outside.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if like, is our skin soaking up the magic of the environment that is different, right? Than like us being maybe in our own ritual rooms. I'm not sure.
But I was going to say, there's a safety element when you're in your privacy of your own home versus even if you're in the deepest of woods, there's always the possibility that somebody's going to stumble upon it and you're going to be exposed, right? It adds that heightened element of, okay, I know I'm not really in danger here, but maybe we just don't know how things are going to go. Like, it adds that tension to it, right? I'm all about the tension tonight.
I would really like to do a stream as the year progresses as well for like each season of the devil. So, and regardless of where we draw our lines between spring and summer, green and gold, we'll try to get that gold one done like in the next month and a half or so, like kind of space them out, and then we can do the red in the fall and the black in the winter. I feel like the devil in black is a form of the devil that I'm still really trying to pin down. Like, to me, that is the most shifty and ethereal of all the forms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been working lately on hospitality. And I had this encounter. I was like at the Tim Hortons, and there's the homeless dude who is always at the Tim Hortons. And he just sits there. Like, he doesn't ever ask for anything. He just sits off to the side. And this one day, he was actually sitting coming up to cars, which is very unlike him. And I, generally speaking, I'm like, sorry, I don't have any change. Like, that's just my thing, right? Like, I'm like, no, I'm not giving up money. And I don't know why this one day. So tying it back to hospitality, in the days of old, when the gods used to go and disguise themselves and they would test people's hospitality. And if you were not hospitable, you would be, have dire consequences, right? This idea of like cultural hospitality. And I literally just was like, this man is the devil himself. He is the witch father in disguise. And I had better damn well give him some money. And I was like scrounging in my wallet for like all the change I could come up with to give to this man, because I was literally like, I felt like I am being tested right now. And he's almost become the face of the devil at the devil in black to me, because I just see him as like the man in black. He's more human in form, but like that older, weathered, missing teeth, not pretty. But he's there to test you.
Like a figurative man at the crossroads in the physical. Yeah, I see that echoed a lot in like a lot of
he's like lost his horns, he's lost his antlers, he he's free of that now, but like he's this old, wizened, like homeless man. And now, and I just like, I cannot get the picture of this guy. I'm like, oh, this poor guy, if he ever catches YouTube, will be like, what?
One of my coven mates who recently initiated at our last time that we do initiations at like the first harvest. We have like this cabin that we like host our first harvest initiatory sort of like Sabbath and initiation and ritual. It's like a 4-day sort of situation, things going on each day. And it's like deep, deep, deep in an area called Brown County, which is what they call like the Little Smokies, because it starts to get kind of like hilly and hollery and like very thick with like the woods and everything. And it very much has like an undercurrent of like that spirit of Appalachia there, genus loci wise. And so where the cabin is that we were using this year, there's no cell service. So like you get to a certain point and you can't use your phone anymore, which sounds to some people kind of like a nightmare,
Oh, it
especially
sounds
depending on time of day because there's not very much light if you're out at night. But just even getting to the cabin, right, is almost like a ritual. Just the journey of getting
wild.
to the cabin to go initiate that first day is almost like a ritual. But also getting home for all of us is also kind of like a ritual.
It's almost like
Um,
a metaphorical otherworldly journey, right?
yeah. And one of the witches got so completely turned around her very first year. She got so completely turned around, and there was also a bunch of construction going on. And like, this is a very sort of rural part of our state. So it's not like there's just a ton of other side roads. Like, oh, that main way is kind of closed down, but if you hop
I used
over
to zip
this way, you
around.
can hop onto that way. Like, there's not. And she ended up coming across like a man in black sort of figure that was like literally on a tractor, almost as if he was waiting for her to ask him for directions.
Amazing.
And she did, and she was able to get her way right out of there. But like she was so nervous about going up to this stranger and asking him, like, I'm lost. I need help getting out of here.
That was like a test of initiation right there.
Hmm. Yeah, when she was telling us about that, um, later when we were like having brunch, I was like, that really feels like a tea.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
that's amazing. Oh, I want to do things like that.
Well, eventually we're gonna get you down here.
I know, eventually.
Eventually it's happening. So
Yeah, yeah. When I'm done my 3rd year, I'll definitely come down. I don't care how much it costs. I will come and do it up.
so many things to show you around here. Yes. And we definitely have to get together. Recently we had our Covens mixer at this place here locally. I met Abby the Witch in
Mhm.
person. She came out to that. That was really awesome. I have a cute little video clip of that I'm going to be including in like a video that I'm making later.
Cool.
I've been taking like kind of a bunch of like little B-roll clips, and I think I'm just gonna throw them in like a April, like end of April, you know,
Yeah,
max
summary
up
of
kind of.
everything that's kind of gone on in the month.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Abby says that she wants to hang out with you too.
Okay.
Let's look at some of these comments here. Let me scroll up. Sorry guys, I haven't really been paying like a whole lot of attention. Um, Zombie, Tamra, Xander. Walaikum assalam, Xander. Bad Cat, Bougie Mystic, Abby the Witch, Blood. Oh, Blood says, this is awesome, Taya. Because of both of you, I've been opening up to the idea of working with the New Jersey Devil as a land spirit of place where I live, here in the southern end of the Pine Barrens.
Very cool.
Special Morgan, Captain Morgan Coffee. You and Australia inspired me to research more about the Jersey Devil, and apparently New Jersey is the only state in the U.S. to have an on-state record of an official state deacon, aka Old Jersey Devil. Abby says that she views the witch's devil as extremely pagan and ancient, the old one.
Yeah. It's funny from my comments. I don't know if you can, I guess you can probably see them, but Dylan was saying that about Gaia and how everybody's like all new agey, love and light. Gaia's so amazing. And he's like, no, she isn't. She's loving, but she's also cruel. She's like, she is nature. She is amoral. She is
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very much similar with the witch's devil, that idea of you just don't know what you're gonna get.
Well, and Gaia's like not even just a goddess. She's like a titan. She's like an old god too.
She's a primordial goddess. I met her once too. That was like intense. Yeah. She wasn't all like pregnant with flowers in her hair. She was like a freaking stuck of mud.
Oh,
Yeah. Slow, gravelly voice. Yeah. Older than time.
seeing the green devil at spring with the first honoring being at the vernal equinox and full power honoring during the green week. And blood, like I'm down. Just message me. Oh, I've been wanting to check this out. Letters from the Devil's Forest is a good book about the witch's devil. You like it?
I have it. I've had it for like 2 years and I've never read it. Robin Artisan.
I need to look at that. Hi, Shadow Sun. Good to see you.
I think it is. It's like the biggest book ever.
Oh, wow. That's way bigger than I expected it to be.
Yeah. It's like individual essays, though, kind of. Yeah. It looks so good. Like, literally, I'm dying that I can't read books right now. Like, I'm just dying.
What about audiobooks? Does that help
like,
at all or no?
I don't know. Yeah, this is like my whole thing. I'm just at a place where I need to do, and I just need to stop reading and I need to start like doing more, because I've gone through like an intense period of learning over the last couple of years. Like all my RTA stuff now, it's about doing. And I'm like, just let go of the light.
Yeah, I saw your video. I think that like that'll be really beneficial for I like watching other people talk about their own UPG because I feel like it helps me sort of draft my correspondences. And it also validates my UPG when I hear other people talking about, like, that's how UPG gets verified.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, sorceress. So speaking of like ecstasy and ritual, like, do you have any suggestions for creating that sort of ecstatic space ritually? Like specifically either or both as a solitary practitioner, but also in a group setting?
Yeah, see, and I was just gonna say, like, as a group setting, I don't know. I've just started working with my study group here that hopefully will eventually kind of blossom into a bit of a coven. But that's like so new. We've only been working together since like last June. So, and I mean, we've had new people come in like just before Christmas. Like it's been it's we just haven't. I mean, there's kind of a core group of us that have really gelled, but it's always a little give and takey. But like in personal working, when I'm just on my own, I think you have to be really willing to go with where it takes you. I find I'm a planner. And I'm like, I will like drink this drink and then I will let it sit for 20 minutes and then I will get in the hot tub and then I will do this and then I will have this experience, and when it is done then I will and then it's like it just doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Sometimes things take hold of you sooner, or you get in the hot tub and it's too hot and you're like, oh god damn it, I'm dying in here, and you have to get out and you have to do it a different way, and you have to be flexible. But if you can be flexible and go with it, you'll be so much more open to having those experiences than trying to stick to a template.
Having the template, though, I think is so necessary.
Yeah, you have to have like a plan.
You gotta have the template.
You have to be flexible to kind of go off script, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest downfall. I'm not good going off script. But I mean, I've like, for me, when you're solitary, I mean, it's a lot easier, I find, so far. with what I've done because I can set just the right lighting, just the right incense level, just the right, you know, if I want to take a little extra time laying the compass, I can. If I want to skip something, I can't. Like, do you know what I mean? I can just kind of go with what's
Yeah.
the mood.
Yeah.
Whereas I find when I'm with the group, we have to very much stick to the schedule. You know, you
Well,
have
and
to
I,
like
yeah.
manage everybody's expectations. And if all of a sudden you're like not doing something, then people are like, oh, it pulls them out, right? They're like, but weren't we supposed to do that thing? What? So
I really feel like for a solitary like practitioner too, like you know the music and like the like you were saying, like the incense, the lighting, the candles, the mood, the temperature, the vibe, the beverage of choice, like the cake of choice, the sort of songs that are going to get you into like a witchy mood. And I feel like creating that to where it's like equally as powerful in a group setting is like can be really tricky. And I think the more the group is kind of like meshed in
yeah,
together
you have
and
to build to that in a group, right?
yeah, yeah, where then like you kind of like build what that magic is as a
But that being
collective.
said, we've had some like really amazing experiences. Like we did one, um, oh my God, I'm trying to remember what were we doing. And afterwards we were all just like, well, oh, that was it. We were sitting. It was with what are they called? The the lighting jack ritual in
Yes.
in
Yes.
um in the fall. And
Love that.
it was so powerful. Like and everybody was like everybody got a message and everybody had a moment and it was really like there was something that made it and I've done that ritual on my own and it was kind of like okay, but when I did it with other people it was really like whoa, that was super cool. Like so there is something to be gained from group working. But to get to the really like the ecstatic state, I think we're gonna need to build a little more. And like no just to the people that I'm working with. They're amazing. It's an amazing group.
Sure. Yeah.
We just I just we've only worked together for like 6 Sabbats, 5
Yeah.
Sabbats. So we're just not there yet. We'll get
I
there.
think it will just continue to crescendo. Like
Mhm.
each time, I think it'll just get like
Yeah.
almost too like, I think working as magical partners, kind of like with other sorts of partnerships, like you learn what gets your partner there, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that sort of philosophy and theory can be like applied to magic, like taking that whole other aspect of it, like out of it, right?
Yeah.
But like you get what I'm saying. Like you know what gets your partner into state. Um, and so I think using that philosophy and magic and like attuning into like your coven mates or like your fellow witches and like trying to all help each other, you know, have the experience together,
Yeah.
I think is so much more powerful than like just simply going and observing something.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I don't feel like someone who's just observing is going to feel that same level of ecstasy.
No, you
Like I
have to
don't,
be in it and doing it to
yeah,
yeah, just watching, you're not gonna
or
I mean,
even reading, or even just reading it. I
yeah.
think that goes in really well with like your letting the light go kind of thing. It's like, you know, you can sit here and read and read and read and read, but at some point you kind of have to do like that's our third pillar of like to dare
Yeah. Yeah.
of the witch's pyramid.
Yeah.
Gannon says, can we compare pictorially that the beast in Slewfoot is the witch's devil, or is the concept of a beast being the witch's devil harmful? Would love to hear your opinion. Well, I have my copy right here. Hold, please. I will get this copy and show you some of the art to bring it fresh into your mind. Um, hold, please. Hold, please. I would say so.
So I think there's definitely a bestial aspect to the devil.
So here's like the thing in Slewfoot, and I won't say this is necessarily a spoiler because it kind of talks about this in the summary too, but like Slewfoot or Samson, the old god of the wild who like the fairy folk in the book call father or king, like this is a piece of his more like old wild god sort of depiction here, where he's got like the witch fire, and then he's got like a flower crown that Abatha, the main character, gave him, and he's got like the horns, and he's bipedal and hooved, but he has hands, and he's kind of very much like part animal. You can see like the
That's
sort of
amazing.
animalistic face.
I feel like I
But
met that guy once. Yeah.
he's kind of also androgynous. Like he has kind of some softer features, some animal-like features. Um, and so in this image, this is like basically right after Abatha kind of helps him remember that he's more than just what they call devil, that he's also like this king and god of the wild. But then there's also him in his like more slewfoot form, which he to me looks very much like some of our cryptids around. This is him in his slewfoot form, where he's got not, hold on, not this image here, but this one,
Yeah.
um, where he's antlered and he's very satyr-like. He's holding like a hatchet, and he's kind
That's
of like,
the guy I danced with. Right there.
yeah.
General Mosquito, this is from Slewfoot.
So like, can we compare pictorically that the beast in Slewfoot is the witch's devil, or is the concept of the beast being the witch's devil harmful? I don't think that, I think that the concept of the witch's devil being animal-like in a beast is the tea. I don't think it's harmful.
I think that if you're a little pearl clutchy over the idea of the witch's devil being bestial, I think you need to do a little bit of thinking about that, right? A little bit of delving into why that would trigger you.
Well, I think maybe I could see maybe some like neo-pagans thinking like, oh, this is like our god and whatever, right? Um, like,
Aren't we as humans beasts? Like, we are not above and beyond nature. We are we are just as much a part of nature as any beast might be.
absolutely.
Ganon might be my Christian trauma.
Well, and I
I
think
didn't want to put that fine a point on it, but
and if we're saying too that the witch's devil is the embodiment of nature, like not only would the witch's devil sort of mirror some human characteristics, but also maybe like the flora and fauna of the landscape the devil is appearing in. Like I can visualize the idea of like moss growing on the devil's antlers,
oh
you know,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
or even like within the devil's fur,
I
like
was just
moss.
gonna say, like, I see that like almost on the torso, like this, almost
Hmm.
like a corset growing around of like
Hmm.
lichen.
Hmm. And mushrooms. Yeah.
Like sloth, right? Sloths actually have algae growing in their fur.
Yes.
Like that almost.
Yes.
Just to tie it back to a whole another thing.
And also too, like, how about the sort of folkloric like Black Phillip that we see in the movie The Witch? Have you seen that? You've got to watch it, Tay.
You know me.
You've
I
got to
didn't know
watch
I didn't
it.
watch it. Is
What?
it scary?
No, it's like it's a folkloric artsy cinema piece. It's not scary.
I have not seen it.
It is not scary. It's called The Witch. It's like spelt with two V's.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, it looks scary, so I didn't watch it.
I won't say it's so the devil comes to the main character in the form of a black Spanish goat. And like this black goat, like we see, and also like a lot of folklore. It's so you've got to watch it. We need
It
to have a
looks
watch.
scary.
I'll watch it
I'm
with
just we
you.
can't do scary things. I have enough anxiety in real life. I don't need pretend anxiety too.
You haven't seen the bit, right, where the devil is like kind of behind her and she's like had her sheath like taken off of her and she's standing in front of the devil's black book and a candle and sky clad and the devil is behind her and you see his hooves and his claws start to kind of wrap around her and he's like, would thou like to live deliciously?
Was
Would
that where that
thou
comes
like
from?
a taste of butter, a pretty dress?
That's
And
funny because Abby put
she's
that in the
like,
chat.
I do. She's like, I do.
Oh,
It's
okay.
so good. What we should do a little watch party with it. That would be cute.
Yeah.
I don't
I've been
think it's
thinking about
scary.
doing that. I'm like, I should actually start watching witchy stuff and like putting it on my channel and being like, a witch reacts. Watching them all through like my clenched fingers.
Oh, that's so fun. I think that would be cute. We could like maybe see about like some of our, our people like getting together and like, you know,
You could be my support group to watch the scary movies.
you'll be fine. I really don't even think that the movie like The Witch is even labeled as like a horror movie. I think it's more of like a folkloric indie film, I would say. I wouldn't say it's any more scary
I
than like
watch romantic comedies. That's it.
I wouldn't say it's any more frightening than like reading some of the folklore.
Yeah. See, when I read it, I can control it, but when you're watching it, it's like it's happening.
Maybe the visuals of it like are a little bit too much, or like the music and everything with your
General
heart.
Mosquito says too, ever since becoming a witch, I don't watch scary movies anymore. I'm not the only one.
I have grown up on horror, like,
Okay,
so I think I'm so desensitized to
when
it.
I was a kid is when E.T. and the Gremlins came out and like Freddy Krueger movies and
Freddy
like,
Krueger terrified me as a kid.
oh my
You know what
god,
else terrified me as a kid though too? The Leprechaun. And that
never
stuff
heard.
is so dumb. Like Leprechaun in the Hood. You've not seen that or heard of that?
Yeah, I know I've heard of it, but yeah, no, I know I'm not gonna watch it.
It's a horror comedy, but like as a kid I was terrified of those little pilgrim shoes. Stepping up to like my bedroom door. On the VHS tape there's an image of the man who plays the leprechaun with his little curly pilgrim shoes. It was the shoes for me. Also just like I'm not going to say that. Never mind. Just leprechaun. There's something sinister. I feel like I can't handle it. But he's standing, right? Like imagine you're laying in bed, the room's completely dark, but the hallway is lit up. And he's got the door cracked and he's like grinning with his sharp little leprechaun teeth. And he's like
How freaking
staring
is
at
this?
you. That's the cover of the VHS tape. And like still to this day, sleep with my door closed. I don't
That's the
think that
same
that's
E.T. I'm terrified of freaking E.T. And it was my sister, my little sister, it was like her favorite thing. She had all these ET stuffed dolls, and we had to share a room. And I would lay like in bed with the covers pulled up
ET
to like
freaked you
here.
out.
Oh my god, ET creeps me out so bad.
I mean, I feel that way about Furbies.
Ugh, yeah,
The
definitely.
Furbies. I mean, Freddy, Michael Myers, Jason, Jeepers Creepers, Chucky. Um,
I only ever saw the commercials, and I was like scarred as a child. So like, don't even.
but those are also like very much classic suspenseful slasher horrors, and like the movie The Witch has none of that. There is some suspense. There is some suspense, and there's like a lot of drama because the family initially was in this puritanical town, and I think the father, um, if I'm trying to remember right, I think the father was maybe accused of like some adultery or something. And so the whole family gets kicked out of like the puritanical like town. And they're just literally trying to survive completely on their own in the new world out in the woods. And they're terrified of like the natives that could be a looming threat, which never come up in the entire film. Um, and so I think because the father was theoretically accused of adultery, he like blames it on bewitchery. So he's like extra uh biblical sort of like thumping with his family and very like abusive. And there's a witch that is out in the woods, but then there's also like the devil, and it very much gives me like witch mother witch father sort of like vibes. And they kind of start like weaving and working like over this family one by one. um and like getting to the main character. And there's like the iconic scene from the movie at the end where they're all skyclad and they're floating in the air and like wailing around a bonfire with the image of the Black Phillip goat there. Francisco Goya's art. Very that.
Mm-hmm. I like Abby.
That
She said
looks
when
like a
she
good
was a
Saturday
kid,
night.
one of her Furbies talked in the night and she almost shit the bed. I'm like, that would be
It was like a possessed Furby. I think that Francisco Goya's paintings sound like the best Saturday night.
me. They're epic. Like, they're a whole vibe. I love them. I do. But they do kind of like scare, like, they're dark.
Taya, you go to the other world. Like, you can watch The Witch. You're watching it with me.
I know,
Like,
right? Yeah, I don't know.
another good one, Coven of Sisters. You guys need to watch that one too. That one's about kind of like a Spanish Inquisition with the witches. Uh, yeah, what?
Have you ever watched Luna Nero?
I think, is that a TV show?
God, it was on Netflix. It was an Italian dub. Oh my God, it was so
I think
amazing.
so. Is there like a witch in there with like white hair and like braids or dreads or something?
Yeah, and it's about this girl and she has to like protect her brother and she's supposed to be like the chosen one, but like the magic doesn't come to her.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then there's
yeah.
like this huge
Was there
like
like her grandmother's grimoire like underneath the
yeah,
floorboard?
it's hidden
Okay,
underneath. Yeah.
I think actually Australia and I, we both had COVID one January at the same time. And so we would like hang out together on like FaceTime, but then we would like watch stuff. Like I would have it on my laptop and she would have
Yeah.
it on her iPad. And we were both having like COVID fever dreams and like I think watching that show together. So I remember bits and pieces of it.
It was
Yeah, it's the
amazing.
Italian one.
Yeah, and the Benandanti, and she was in love with the son of the head of the Benandanti, who were like the witch hunters, and like, oh my God, it was like so amazing. And there's supposed to be another season of it, but I've never seen it. But like the theme song from that movie is like my number one witchy song.
I love that Faye Healed, like go into a hair song that you shared with me too.
Mm-hmm.
That's on my playlist.
Yeah.
And every time it comes up, I'll think of you.
Aww. I can't remember where I found that song. That's a good one.
What are the other movies and shows? What was the one that you referenced again? That you just mentioned?
Luna Nero. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. It was on Netflix. It's an Italian dub, so like
I think
be,
I
be
watched it
prepared
for
for the mouths to not match the words, but it's so good.
I think I watched it for free on Tubi. So if it's not on Netflix, you might be able to find it there or just Google it.
So good.
The Coven of Sisters is in regards to like the Spanish Inquisition. And it's like this group of young women who are just, doing things out in the woods. They end up getting accused of witchcraft. And in order to like prolong their trial, since they're convinced they're going to be put to death anyway, as many other people before them, they decide to kind of play this game of cat and mouse with the head priest that's doing a lot of the interrogation. And he is like a pervert with a capital P, and they're able to kind of like manipulate him due to his own repressed sexuality. And they kind of feed him like little bits and pieces of this idea of the ecstatic witches orgy at the Sabbath with the devil. And like they all paint little different snippets of a story, almost like erotica before erotica was written, right? Like these
Yeah.
girls are all kind of like placating the perverted, twisted desires of this repressed priest. And they're able to like prolong their trial. And then they even convince him that like they're going to take him to the Sabbath. And so they like, yeah, that's a really good one. It's not horror.
See, I
Okay.
watch these shows, right? And I'm like, I love them so much. And part of the reason I can't watch them is because then I'm like, I want to live in that world.
But you could I mean, I think that it would be, that's part of what inspired to like host the physical Sabbath. Like I remember talking to Kelvin, like, and he was saying in his area, they have, I think, a similar sort of like pagan campground that we have. And like they would host Sabbaths and stuff. And I just, yes, the Sabbath in the other world, but like, don't you just love the idea of like a party out in the woods in real life
That
with
would
like
be
rituals going all night long?
that would be amazing. I don't have that here.
Alcura?
A la carta.
I wish they would make a movie out of Slewfoot too. Okay, I thought all of the paranormal activity movies were just trash. Like, I felt very understimulated watching just a whole lot of nothing on like a shitty recording. And then like everything would happen in the last 10 minutes of the movie. And like 90% of it was like a ball rolling across the floor of like someone's home video. So, since we're close to like the hour and a half, I guess we should probably wrap it up for the stream, right? Yeah.
Probably. We're like
Thank
way
you.
off topic now.
I know. Thank you though for filling in for Australia on this Daughters of Cain and um, helping us sort of put more into words this aspect of the devil in the season of green. For those of you watching, if you create any rituals of your own involving working with the devil in green, I would love to see them. And thank you, everyone in chat. And thank you, T, for coming on. Do you have any closing thoughts before we end this?
Thank you for having me. I just think this stuff is so interesting to talk about and like so kind of like important to talk about. You don't see a lot of people talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you for creating the platform and putting it out there. It's really just cool to be a part of it. So thank you.
All right, guys. We will see you in another video. Maybe we'll talk about traditional witchcraft traditions, neo-traditions, the controversy, the gag, the shade, and the tea of it all. So we'll talk about that and we'll maybe get something planned. Okay, bye guys. Oh, blessed be and see y'all in hell.